It's wild to think about. Why do some economies just absolutely thrive, literally pushing the boundaries of human progress, while others seem to endlessly waste their potential? It's a massive question. We look around the world and see some nations humming along perfectly, while others struggle, even though they have plenty of land, labor, or capital. And spoiler alert, it's almost never about luck. It all comes down to how they handle their fundamental economic problems.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a really fun micro-to-macro journey straight into the core mechanics of how societies actually function. We're drawing directly from our source material on the basic problems of an economy, but we're skipping past the foundational what, how, and for whom to produce stuff. Instead, we're diving straight into the heavy-hitting, structural challenges every society faces: resource utilization, efficiency, and economic growth.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, the cost of idle resources. Second, maximizing efficiency in the economy. And finally, the engine of economic growth.
Section 1. The cost of idle resources, or the problem of fuller utilization.
So we all know resources are limited, right? But consider this quote straight from the source. Unemployment of resources is a dead loss. That is such a stark way to put it, but it's absolutely crucial. When we hear the word unemployment, we usually just think of a worker having a tough time between jobs. But macroeconomically speaking, leaving resources idle, whether that's a vacant plot of land, a powered-down factory machine, or a willing worker, is a permanent loss. That productive capacity just goes to waste. Society forever misses out on whatever could have been created during that specific window of time. You literally cannot rewind the clock and get that lost production back.
Think about an unemployed factory worker versus an employed one. When a worker is unemployed, yes, it's a personal struggle for sure, but it is also a macroeconomic failure. They aren't contributing to the national output during that time, so their potential basically just evaporates. But when that worker is employed, they're actively adding to society's overall pool of goods and services. Because our overall resources are strictly limited from day one, leaving any of them sitting on the sidelines is a luxury an economy just cannot afford.
Now, imagine visualizing this dead loss on a production possibility curve. If an economy is operating at a point well inside its actual boundary, let's call it point C, it represents a system plagued by unutilized idle resources. If a nation is stuck there, it means workers are sitting at home, machines are gathering dust, and land is just sitting barren. They are severely underperforming their mathematical potential.
Section 2. Maximizing efficiency in the economy. Because just using resources isn't the whole battle.
We have to shift our focus from idle resources to misused resources. Imagine a construction site where the masons are doing all the carpentry and the carpenters are doing the masonry work. It sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, sure, technically everyone is employed. Nobody is technically idle here. But the output is going to be terrible because there's a massive wastage of specialized skills. To actually maximize output, the economy has to reallocate them to their best possible use. Carpenters do woodwork, masons lay bricks. It sounds incredibly simple when we say it out loud, but this kind of misallocation happens on a massive, highly complex scale in inefficient economies.
Which brings us to a really critical definition: optimum utilization. This simply means allocating resources to their best possible use to maximize output and absolutely minimize waste. True efficiency is reached in an economy only when a very specific condition is met. You literally cannot produce more of one good without producing less of another. Think about that for a second. If you can magically make more of one product without giving up any of another, well, you weren't operating efficiently to begin with. You were wasting resources. Efficiency means you are stretched to your absolute productive limit.
So, to optimize efficiency, an economy has to drag itself out of that sluggish, underperforming interior and operate exactly on its boundary line. When you're sitting right on that edge, every single resource is fully employed and efficiently utilized. You are redlining your economic engine in the best way possible. Getting society to that boundary is the ultimate goal of daily resource management.
Section 3. The engine of economic growth. Because sitting perfectly on the curve is definitely not the end of the story. How does a fully utilized economy actually expand its horizons? Well, this is where the magic of economic growth comes into play. The problem of economic growth is essentially the challenge of increasing an economy's overall capacity to produce goods and services over the years. How do we do that? It basically boils down to two main drivers: finding more resources or improving our technology and efficiency. When a nation pulls this off, its productive capacity grows, which directly translates to a higher standard of living. And the scorecards we use to track this? Our source points out it's formally measured by a rise in national income and per capita income. More capacity means more income, which means a fundamentally better life for the people living there.
Visually, when economic growth happens, that entire production possibility curve shifts outward. Think about what that really means. Points that were entirely unattainable before, combinations of goods that society literally did not have the resources or tech to build, suddenly become attainable. The economy hasn't just shuffled things around on the existing curve, it has built a brand new, bigger curve. That outward shift is the ultimate representation of human progress and technological development.
Which leaves us with a pretty powerful question. Is your economy operating on the curve, or is it just waiting to grow? We've journeyed today from the permanent dead loss of idle workers to the absolute necessity of efficiently allocating our skills, and finally, to the technological expansion that pushes our boundaries outward. Understanding these central problems really is the key to unlocking the true potential of any society. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this gives you a whole new perspective the next time you look at the world's economies or even your own nation's potential. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.